Hi, welcome back to our series on Uncommon Success, How Family Stewards Produce Intentional Wealth. I'm David Witter, founder and CEO of Financial Harvest Wealth Advisors. And today, we're moving into the fourth chapter of our book in our series, which is called Caring for Aging Parents. Many baby boomers today are in what's called the sandwich generation. They still may be helping out their adult children, whether they just started in their career or still looking for their first job. And they're also caring for their aging parents, whether that's financially or as caregivers. And when I interviewed our 45 family stewards, I noticed they were once again very intentional about how they cared for their aging parents. And they also tended to produce very satisfying outcomes. So let's take a look at the 3 best practices I gleaned from them, as well as when we work with our own clients. The first one is make sure you take care of yourself. I'll start with a story where Katie and I were chatting with a senior pastor and his wife of a very prominent church here locally. And he was telling us, he said, Dave and Katie, very early on in my ministry and my career, we were being mentored. And they told us this, something that's always stuck with us. If we are stressed, overcommitted, and just stretched too thin, then we're not any good to anybody. And that was very relevant in the context here when we're caring for aging parents. Many of you probably have witnessed or have personal experience where someone, their whole purpose, and they engage so heavily in caring for their aging parents that it really produced stress not only on them, but the relationships around them. So this is the first best practice. Take care of yourself. Stay engaged in those other relationships. Be active. Be intentional about having other activities in other relationships other than just caring for your aging parents. Number 2 is communicating with all family members that are involved. We pulled out 2 distinctions here, effectively and also respectfully. So what do we mean by effectively? That means that it is successful in producing the intended outcomes. That's obviously your own intentions, caring for your parents, but your siblings, and also don't forget your parents. Taking care of them and what are their intentions, and making the plan of action and the care, taking care of all those that are concerned. Secondly is respectfully. What do we mean by respectfully is organizing around the concerns of others. What are the concerns of all those that are involved, and can you come up with a plan of action that cares for all of them? Third best practice is sharing your own planning with your parents. So what might be the purpose here? By talking with them, as opposed to telling them, hey mom and dad, you need to do this, you can say, hey mom and dad, we were recently meeting with our estate planning attorney and with our professional team, and here's what we're doing. And it allows them to think about their own situation to see if they've done that planning to be successful for themselves. So let's go to our checklist, the self-assessment opportunity here. So work through these, think about your own situation, and see what new actions you can be in. The first one on the checklist we call care planning. Primary here is, what are your parents' wishes? If they're still in good health, have you talked with them about this? Do they want to stay in their home and hire outside help? Do they want to stay in the home and have someone come in like a family member? Do they want to consider a continuing care community? What are their wishes? Secondly, who holds what role? If a family member is going to step in and help out with some of the care, who's going to fill that role? What about financing that? Who holds that role and help it out in that regard? And also, if someone's holding the role of a caregiver, is it set up where they can get help or get a substitute so that they have time, maybe a couple of days during the week where they're not responsible for that, or a couple of weeks where they have a vacation? Third here is considering outside help. If you're going to utilize that, what's the selection process? What's the criterion standard for choosing who you're going to have from the outside to help? And how do you fund that? And who's responsible for that? Second on our checklist, communication. Who needs to be involved? Do you bring in, obviously, the spouses? Let's say they remarried, the parents remarried. And what about stepchildren? How important it is to involve them? And then the frequency and the method of communication. Some prefer email, some prefer text, some prefer voicemails or calls. How do you keep everyone involved and in the know about how the care for mom and dad is going? Last but not least is sharing your own planning. Start with your own purposes. Say, hey mom and dad, I just want to share what we're doing, just so maybe it opens up new thinking for you maybe there's something that you missed or that you'd like to consider in your own planning. And then secondly with that is, should professionals be present as you review your parents' estate planning? Maybe you bring in the estate planning attorney to design those. Maybe you get a second attorney, like a second set of eyes, like a second opinion on that. Bringing in the wealth manager, maybe even sometimes your tax professional as well. So use this checklist to do your care planning for your aging parents and maybe even for yourself. And so you can use this to be intentional with producing good outcomes for those that you love most.